Hi, I'm Ajaire, and I'm a Cuddle ambassador at Shannon Fabrics here in the Cuddle Studio today, and we're going to talk about the top 10 tips for sewing with Cuddle Minky. It can feel a little tricky to sew with Cuddle at first, but with these top 10 tips, you'll get professional results every time. The tips are: number 1, mark your fabric before you cut. Number 2, cut with the right tools. 3, you want to get rid of all of your Cuddle dust, any of that little pile that's come off, before you start to sew. 4, we use our double pinning method. 5, lengthen your stitch and lower your foot pressure. Number 6, we always use a 90-14 stretch needle. Number 7, we use a walking foot. Number 8, use a polyester thread such as Metrocene by Metler. Number 9, use basting spray for smooth sewing, kind of holding things in place. And number 10, always follow the wash and care instructions for Minky. All right, for tip number 1, mark before you cut. I'm going to put this fabric out. This is a C3, which is our Cuddle 3 low pile fabric. And it's always important to mark before you cut because we are cutting from the back. We mark on the backing and cut from the back because most of the time we only want to cut the backing and not the longer pile of the other types of Cuddle. So you can use a few different options here, and it depends on what you're marking on. With a C3, something like a Sharpie, like a permanent felt marker. I like these ones that have a little finer tip, and we can show you that in a minute. You want to use something permanent so that it doesn't bleed later if you are going to wash it. You could use something like the water erasable marker or the air erasable, but they don't tend to show up in some of the darker colors. If you have a darker color, a nice silver Sharpie works great. So let me show you how we mark. You're going to use a ruler. This is an OmniGrid ruler here, but I lined up the edges, and let's just say I wanted to cut out this width here. I'm using, this is a fine, let's see what it is, ultra fine retractable Sharpie pen. I kind of just go back and forth like this. And then what I do to get extra height, if I needed more than just what this ruler could provide, I can then place another ruler on top, and I know this edge is already straight. So if I line this edge up there, I'm going to be able to continue to mark along that line. So you can see that gives a nice fine line there. When you're working with some of the thicker luxe Cuddles, you may need to use a thicker Sharpie. That fine line may not show up quite as well. So let's just show you that. Here, you can mark along there. And that's going to show up really well on this thicker pile. With some of the finer points, if you start to try to do it, it might catch a little bit on the thicker fabric and it's harder to mark. So it just depends on what you're using, which fabric you're using, which markings you're going to do. Another reason we mark the backing before we start to cut is that the fabric, especially these, something like this, which is a Luxe Cuddle Encore, it's really plush. So if we don't mark the backing and we just start to try to cut or even hold a pattern piece down and try to just cut around it, that fabric might want to shift and move on you, and there is this like vertical distance in there. So if you can mark it first, you know that you're cutting on a line and not cutting with the pressure that you're putting on it. That pressure can take away, you know, width-wise and vertical as you're pushing into the fabric. So if we mark it, we know we're getting a much more accurate measurement. Tip number 2, cut with the right tools. Depending on what you're cutting, again, you might use different cutting tools. We have our micro serrated scissors. These are Karen K. Buckley's, a regular Olfa rotary cutter, and then the Olfa SAC1 blade. So with a C3 or a digital Cuddle, a lot of times you can get away with just using a rotary cutter. In fact, you can just line up your ruler. I have a straight edge here, now I'm wanting to get a straight edge there, and you can just simply use that. Now you will have some pile coming off of there, but with a C3, it's not going to be super important, so it's okay to use a rotary cutter just to simplify things. Now if you're cutting something like this Luxe Cuddle Encore, you're going to want to mark it first, tip number 1. So I will mark it. And then you're going to want to cut with something like the SAC1 blade. And what that does is it just allows you to cut just the backing of the fabric. You can see you're not cutting off all that nice pile. If you did the rotary cutter, it would chop that right off. So we just cut that the knife all the way down like that. Or you can use those micro serrated scissors. And you're going to want to get back behind there and you're just cutting the backing. The micro serrated scissors are great if you're cutting out things like appliques or small shapes. They work really well for that. And I can show you, if you're using the right tools, you're going to have less cuddle dust than you will if you use the wrong tools. So here you can see some of it comes off, but you've got some nice pile overhang there to work with. Okay. Tip number 3, get rid of that cuddle dust before you start to sew. So as you can see, I kind of used my hands just to pull some of that off. I will grab this scrap here and I'll toss that. One option is to use a small handheld vacuum. You just suck right along that edge and then shake off any extra. And as you can see, that dust is all gone and you won't have any of that cuddle dust in your sewing machine. The other way is, we cut this piece earlier and it had a little fluff on there. You can take this, you bundle it all up and throw it into your no heat dryer with a damp washcloth for maybe 10 minutes, and all of that extra cuddle dust will come off in the dryer into the lint trap. So you can just clean the lint trap when you're done, and it's a really easy way to get rid of all the cuddle dust on a bunch of little pieces. I like to do this method when I'm cutting out something like a stuffed animal, and I know there's going to be lots of little dust, lots of little pieces. I ball it all up, put it in a bag, dump it into the dryer without the bag. Don't forget to put the bag away, and run it through the dryer on a no heat setting. A final way to get rid of the cuddle dust is you can really just shake it. You can take it outside, or you can just shake it like this down below you. Try to keep it low. You don't want that dust flying up all over the place, but then you can just vacuum up the floor afterwards. So it really depends on how much mess you want to make during the process. Tip number 4, double pinning. Now double pinning is something that we do in order to keep the cuddle fabric from shifting when we're sewing it. So we will line our pieces up, get our flower head pins. These are the ones that come in a little box like this from Clover, and they hold up really well to doing this double pinning method. So we'll put one at one end, then we line up the edges here, and another pin at the other end, and then put the fabric flat and just let it sit where it naturally wants to go. And then you're going to fill these pins in on either side. Just keep going kind of center and then out. So this first row of pins we do right along the edge. These are going to be removed as we sew. The second row is to keep the fabric in place, and it's going to stay in there. So I kind of like to put these in there staggered from the other ones if I can. And then you want it to be far enough away from your presser foot that they're not going to hit the presser foot or the needle. These ones we remove at the very end. So you just put a few of those pins in there. So we call this double pinning, and we use this in all sorts of cuddle applications. Tip number 5, we're going to go over to the sewing machine because we're going to lengthen our stitch and lower the foot pressure. Now on this Bernina 790 Pro, we're going to change the stitch length. This is a straight stitch, but we're going to change it. Right now it's at a 3 millimeter, which is kind of wide for regular cotton sewing, but if we're sewing on Cuddle, it can go up to 3.5. Somewhere between 3 and 4 is best. Your machine is going to tell you what it likes best. The other thing we're going to change is the foot pressure. Some of them have a dial on top. This Bernina 790 Pro has a handy dandy little screen here, and we're just going to lower that foot pressure down. Have it at probably right around the 7. It looks like 7 right there. And that's going to help the fabric go through without wanting to get stuck or bunch as it goes through. Number 6, we're going to use a 90-14 stretch needle. These ones from Schmetz are great. You're always going to use that 90-14 stretch needle because this is a knit fabric and we want to make sure that the needle pushes the fibers to the side instead of stabbing right through it, and that stretch needle will do that. Tip number 7, you're going to use a walking foot. Now on this Bernina 790 Pro is a dual feed, but for today we are using an actual walking foot on it. Your machine could do several different options. Different manufacturers have different names for it, but you want to have something that's going to take the feed dogs on the bottom and a foot on the top and kind of work together to guide the fabric through instead of just the feed dogs on the bottom and nothing on the top. That really helps you get success with sewing some of the thicker fabrics. And number 8, we're going to use a polyester thread. We use 100% polyester like this Metler Metrocene thread. Let me just show you how well this sews. Nice 1/2 inch seam allowance. Remove that second row of pins and you're all set with that. Tip number 9 is use a basting spray. We love this 505 spray from Odif. It's just going to give you a temporary adhesive when you go to sew your projects. So let's say you're doing something like a stitch and flip. You want to make sure you have plenty of paper down for any overspray. You don't want this to be sprayed on the top of your quilt. So what I do is I just do a quick little spray. You do not need a lot of this. I'll show you how we're just going to fold this over. Let's say it was supposed to go in place like that. And you're just going to bat that down. And it will hold it temporarily. Now, the nice thing about the 505 spray is that if you messed up and you need to reposition it, you can pull it up and reposition it. So that is really handy to use that 505. Now they came out with another product that is a 505 temporary adhesive glue stick. This works great on something like a smaller applique. So you can take your little mini piece of applique or whatever you have and just put the glue all along the edges. And this is just a temporary adhesive. This should wash out. But again, you want to try to keep it from getting on the very top of the fabric. So let's flip this over, and I'll show you. We would just put this in place. Let's say you want it right there. And again, you're just going to pat that down, and then that can be in place temporarily. Still removable for now, but that would hold so you can get that under the sewing machine for stitching. And tip number 10, follow those wash and care instructions. We love these little labels. They say made with love on them from Shannon Fabrics, and they have the wash care instructions right on the back. It's 100% polyester fabric. You want to machine wash cold with light colors. You're just going to dry in a no heat dryer, or you can line dry. What I like to do is line dry mine or even light flat, and then once it's dry, put it in the no heat dryer to fluff it all up. What you want to be careful of is no fabric softener. Some of the detergents nowadays have fabric softener baked right in. You want to make sure you don't use fabric softener when you are washing your minky. And those are the top 10 tips for sewing with Cuddle. I'm sure if you use these tips, you're going to have great success with your Cuddle sewing. If you enjoyed this, I'd love you to check out more of our videos over in the Cuddle Studio.